Okay. Can't see her in the participant also. Only I can see Dr. Prakash.
Okay. And
I think
Sneha, I'm just forwarding the slide deck.
Mark Payal also. Mark Payal also, Dr. Singh.
She will admit.
Dharmik, are you there?
Dr. Snehal, I think Rashmi ma'am is not able to join in. So I have shared her the link. So can you just talk to her once?
I'll do that.
Hi, Soumya.
Hello, ma'am.
How are you?
Good evening. Good. Looking nice, ma'am.
Thank you. So are you.
Thank
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, Suruchi.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm fine. Thank you. Good to have you in the program.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks for your kind invite and thank you for the honor.
Yeah, not at all. Hi, Sneha, and hi, Snehal.
Hello, hello, Doctor.
Yes. Hello, Nishi.
Hi,
Hello,
ma'am.
Shanti.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, ma'am.
All the best to both of you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
You're
ma'am.
the youngest, probably. So that's nice. Shanti, is that a sari or something?
No, ma'am, it's a salwar with a shawl.
Yeah, but it's looking like a sari good, you know.
Yeah.
We need to cheat a little bit more, you know. So,
You're looking lovely with the bindi and that heart, that pearl.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, this one, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me show off a little bit more.
Please, ma'am. And please. Yes.
So all set, Nishi?
Yes, ma'am.
And I think Rajita is in, I can see. Rajita.
Yeah, Dr. Rajita has just taken a break for 5-10 minutes.
And I think Dr. Vibhu is also
Latika.
here.
Yeah.
Hi, Rajita.
Snehal, please rename Payal.
Yeah.
Doctor.
I think I can see Tina ma'am, but okay. Mine is showing us Payal. Wait, I have to change my name.
Network coverage area.
Okay, I think we're using your dummies probably, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. The ID everywhere it's with the login of Payal, hence we are
Because,
renaming
you
it.
know, issue is actually Kirti sends lots of mails. So that is the problem. So we're, hi Latika.
Hi Rashmi. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening.
So I think Dr. Nina Madams, you'll have to change probably. I think it is showing us somebody else.
Actually, I think logged in using Sneha's thing. Sneha, you please change.
Yeah.
I think, ma'am, you'll have to change with the 3 dots.
No, I think Sneha said she'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dr. Snehal will do it. Yes.
Welcome, ma'am. Welcome, Dr. Vibhu, ma'am. I can't see her. I hope she's there.
So I'll be taking a picture.
Yeah, but wait, let the others put their videos on, no? Ma'am, can you put your video on, Nina ma'am? We're just taking a picture, and also Rajita's is on, and who else has to put it on? Dr. Vibhu. Okay,
Yeah,
I
ma'am
think,
is
yeah,
on.
you're there. Acha, hello. You're wearing the same pearls, is it? Yeah, same pinch. No, it's a different pearl.
Looking lovely, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the last minute, rushed
I
kind
think
of
these are always very
exercise.
handy for last minute.
Always handy because you'll never have the time to really dig into your, real good stuff. So this is handy. You just take it out and what are you wearing? Sari.
No, it's an artificial looking sari, but it's basically just a dupatta. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes one has to get ready in the car also, no? So
Yeah.
keep things and get ready, last minute things in the car.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There was that movie
So
with
otherwise,
Govinda.
I think we should have more of these tips and tricks how to, how to get ready when you have no. Hi, Soumya.
Hello, ma'am. Looking lovely.
Hi. Am I audible? I'm audible.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah, very much
Yes,
so.
yes.
I'm
Yeah.
audible.
Nina
Yeah.
ma'am, can you
Just
switch on the
checking.
video? We'll take a quick picture. Yeah, okay. So who's doing the picture now? Nishi, are you doing? You have
Yeah,
everybody.
ma'am, I'm doing. Done, ma'am.
Done?
We have 4 more minutes to start with. We are
Right.
already live.
So panel has just 1 second. There's Sheetal. That is, I have to actually count. I'm trying to mentally think how many people. So there's Sheetal. There is how many are there? 6 or 7?
Yes, ma'am. I think questions are divided into 2 per question, I think. That's how.
No, I'm just trying to mentally remember the names.
Yeah.
You know.
6
So
panelists are there.
Nisha, Suruchi, Nishi, Suruchi, and Pallavi is there, kya?
Soumya is also there.
Pallavi is supposed to be there.
Hey, ma'am.
Okay, so ye ho gaye, फिर Soumya is there and Rajita is there.
Only Pallavi
Sheetal
has
is
yet
there.
to join.
And Sujata is there, kya isme?
No, Sujata is not there. Pallavi has to
She
join.
was in the last, okay.
I've already called her once, but she's not picking up, Dr. Pallavi.
Pallavi does come last minute sometimes, you know. So, but do keep trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, this idea of getting ready in the car came from not a woman, from a man. It's from Govinda actually. Govinda had that movie, if you remember. I think was it Coolie number 1? No, it was Hero number 1.
Hero number 1.
Which he always got ready in the car actually.
Rushing.
Yeah. I don't know whether the very young people have seen it, but he would get ready while going to work, you know. Having his breakfast, getting ready, everything. So Snehal, you'll talk a little bit about IWDN. Last minute I'm posting again. Delhi NCR,
I think
Delhi
Dr.
State.
Snehal is, I think, coordinating with Dr. Pallavi. So
You can put it in the Delhi State branch groups if any of you are there.
Dr. Pallavi is just joining.
I think anyway we can start once it is 1 minute past 8 or something, and
Yeah,
maybe
it's
then
just
give
it's
it the time to join.
yeah, just 1 minute to go.
So somebody from Dr. Reddy's team in the end also you can take a picture because somebody would have joined or something. Just do a good screenshot which you can use for your Facebook and Instagrams and whatever.
Yeah. Should we start?
Yeah. I think Pallavi is there.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, I'm there.
Okay, fine. So all aboard, you can close the doors of the plane, I think, and start.
Absolutely. So, a warm good evening to all the doctors from the medical fraternity. I am Dr. Snehal Muchala, and I welcome each one of you for yet another interesting webinar. This webinar has been conducted by IWDA in association with Dr. Reddy's. At the outset, I just wish that this year 2021 brings in lots of happiness and success to each one of us. I also take this opportunity in introducing IWDA. Well, IWDA is an Indian Women Dermatologic Association. It was founded in 2018. IWDA does lots of academic programs and also leadership programs. It also has its own conference by name Bodycon and also its own bulletin by name Rose. I also take this privilege in welcoming the IWDA president, that is Dr. Rashmi Sarkar. And I take this privilege in introducing Dr. Rashmi Sarkar to this August gathering. And then I would request Dr. Rashmi to give the welcome note to all our delegates who have joined us. So just a minute, let me share my screen. Dr. Rashmi Sarkar is also president-elect of IADVL. She is a professor of dermatology at Lady Hardinge Medical College, New Delhi. Prior to this, she was professor at Maulana Azad Medical College for over 14 years. Dr. Sarkar is a great academician. She has been an editor for 14 books. She has penned around 180 articles and has over 75 chapters across various topics in dermatology. She has been the National Secretary of IADVL from 2014 to 15, Joint Secretary 2012, and has also been the President of IADVL Delhi State Branch for 2018. She was the former Secretary General for ASPCR, Chief Founder and President of Pigmentary Disorders Society. Dr. Rashmi has been representing India in many global forums. To mention a few, prestigious annual AAD in 2006, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. The conference of WCD, ICD, WCPDs, ASPCRs also. She has been an active speaker and moderator in many national conferences. To talk about a few achievements, Dr. Rashmi has been awarded the Maria Duran Fellow Award. She has also been awarded with Dr. B.A. Ambadi Oration 2019 and Dr. Madhusudan Das Oration. She has won the Economic Times and Inspiring Dermatologist Award for 2019 and also the Professor V.N. Sehgal Award 2020. Dr. Rashmi has been an inspiration for many dermatologists across the globe. She is a president of the Indian Women Dermatological Association and also the vice president for ISD, that's the International Society of Dermatology. We at Dr. Reddy's Laboratory are pleased to get associated with her for the various endeavors of disseminating knowledge for dermatologists. So over to you, Dr. Rashmi.
A very warm good evening to everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. Snehal, for making those efforts to tell us about the Indian Women's Dermatologic Association. And at the outset, I'd like to say we had Happy International Women's Day on 8th of March, but this entire month, more or less, we do celebrate as a Women's Dermatology Month. And this time we had a cascade of webinars, this being the last in the series, in which we have an academic component, like you'll have today, the chronic telogen effluvium. And we also have a section which is closer to our heart, and it's a coffee session with at least 2 eminent dermatologists, and it's done by a younger person. So she's already talked about the Indian Women's Dermatologic Association. I'd like to say that in case you want to join the IWDA, we have a pretty nice website. We've tried to work hard on the website so that you don't have to ask any of us. It's www.indianwomensderm.com, and become members because it has benefits. It has an academic arm. It also has an Indian Women's Dermatologic Association L'Oreal Leadership Program for women dermatologists. This is very unique. 4 women dermatologists had attended the unique leadership program last year, including some of us who were observers. So we were also the gainers, actually, some of us as executive members. Besides this, we have a community project, and that is the IWDA Women's Dermatologic Society Women's Global Shelter Project that we do. And we have a bulletin which is called ROSE. We also have a conference which is called Vodacon, which is held every year. This year, we hope that we can have a physical one, and that is going to be on 17th and 18th of July, 2021. It will be at Hotel Eros at Nehru Place, Delhi. So please watch this space for more, because we will come up with registrations soon. But we hope that we will get together again and have slice of life as well as a lot of academic talks like we've had before. I'd also like to tell you that we have women, doing quite well these days, and we have, 2 women in leadership roles. Both Dr. Neena Khanna Madam and Dr. Vibhu Mendiretta, what is common today in this coffee session is both of them became heads of their respective departments. Dr. Neena Khanna at AIIMS, Dr. Vibhu Mendiretta at Lady Hardinge Medical College in November 2021. So around the same time, little bit here and there, they became the heads of 2 very big institutes. And that is what is going to be a little interesting, at how it feels and what is the journey going to be like, in the future. This is going to be held by a very young dermatologist, that is Dr. Shanti Devdasan. Dr. Shanti has been my student. She is one of the most intelligent, most wonderful students. And I'm sure she's also been the convener of the IITVL Residents Connect Committee in 2020. In case you don't know, you will see a lot more of Dr. Shanti Devdasan in the future. I'm very confident about that. And Dr. Neena ma'am is somebody we looked up to. And when I came to Delhi, probably we'd just heard about her. But it was great to meet her in person. What I've always liked about ma'am was the way she has always been so well dressed. Her lovely sarees, always very starched. And the smile that she has. And the best part is that ma'am can make any particular talk very lively. She has often told me that, Rashmi, you've given me the most difficult talks to do. If you notice, many of you would know here, we give her very difficult topics, but she's always made it very interesting. For all those who know her, besides being a great academician, she also has a good knowledge of, how to manage finances. That was something I had heard about her. And that is something that I wish we learn more from her, because as women, I think the part that we kind of neglect or we leave it to the men is managing finances. And I think we should know it well, we should not be totally clueless. And Dr. Vibhu Mendiretta is somebody I probably know from 1997 or 98, one of the years when I was working as a senior resident in Lady Hardinge Medical College. And she had also joined as an assistant professor. We go back a long time. We did a lot of publications together. And we've also traveled for a couple of conferences together. And we've had a very good time, because we've, often shared the room. And I have very good, very pleasant memories of that. And roles have really changed. And today I'm working in the same department, where she's the head. But it has been a great journey. So there's a lot more to know about them. And hopefully today you will learn a lot more than just their academic profile today. I do not want to stand more between you and the wonderful panel that is going to take place on chronic telogen effluvium. Believe me, we need a lot more hair on our heads. And who better than Dr. Latika Arya? Latika Arya, of course, is a very well-known consultant in Delhi. But besides that, she has also been one of the friends that I found when I joined Lady Hardinge Medical College. By the way, yesterday was Lady Hardinge Medical College Foundation Day. So that was the wonder. And we have a lot of Hardonians, you know, in this particular program today. So probably what Lady Hardinge Medical College gave me was a lot of friends. So she would be doing that. And we have some very wonderful panelists today. Some who are usual suspects like Dr. Sheetal Pujari, you know, because she's already a big name that is in the west of India. And of course, Dr. Rajita Dami Shetty, who's there, you know, who's a very on the most wanted list for speakers most of the time. And, you know, you're the female most, you know, wanted, you know, not Salman Khan, but Rajita Dami Shetty, you know. And she's there. Then besides that, we have Soumya Jagadisan, who's been somebody I've worked with very closely and very proud of her achievements. Then we also have people like, you know, Dr. Suruchi Garg, who's joining us first time on the panel, but she's also very well known in the Chandigarh area. A lot of aesthetic procedures as well as medical dermatology. She's into publication. There's a lot to learn from her. There's Dr. Pallavi Elavadi, again from Faridabad, and she's both in academic dermatology and doing a good practice. And somebody again very close to me. And Dr. Nishi Yadav, who's probably the youngest, you know, no, Shanti is the youngest, but one of the younger people. Again, you'll see a lot more of Dr. Nishi Yadav. Have I left out anybody? I don't think so. So my apologies in case I have. So over to you, Dr. Snehal.
Thank you, ma'am, for this kind introduction and welcome note.
And yeah, Dr. Snehal, thank you very much to Dr. Reddy's team. It's full of women here and they've done a wonderful job in getting everybody together. They've also heard me telling them that do this right and do that right. So they've been very patient about it. But overall, they are a great team. Thank you.
Thank you for that, ma'am. So we would now like to move on to our academic program. And as Dr. Rashmi has already mentioned, the topic is chronic telogen effluvium. As we all know, it's one of the most common cause of hair loss, and it's mainly a diffuse pattern of hair loss affecting the entire scalp, affects between the age of 30 to 40 years. So to throw more light on this, I would now request, or I'll take this opportunity to welcome and introduce our moderator and panel. Dr. Rashmi has already done, but I'll just read a few of the achievements what my entire, the moderator and the panelists have. So very quickly, just give me a minute to just share my screen. So today's panel will be moderated by Dr. Latika Arya, who is a senior consultant dermatologist in private practice in New Delhi. Her special interests are mainly acne, pigmentary disorders, and dermaendocrinology. Dr. Latika is also the secretary of the Indian Women's Dermatologic Association. In the panel, we have Dr. Sheetal Amin Pujari, who is a professor and head of Department of Dermatology, KJ Somaiya Medical College and Hospital, Mumbai. Dr. Pujari is also the honorary secretary of IADVL Maharashtra for the year 2015 and 19. She has also received the Chairman's Award for Research, that is the Somaiya Educational Achievement Award in 2014. We have Dr. Rajita Dami Shetty, who is also the medical director of Oliva chain of 23 hair and skin clinics in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Kochi, Kolkata, Pune, and Vizag. Dr. Rajita is also the chairman of IADVL Task Force Against Topical Steroid Abuse. She has delivered over 200 invited lectures in various national and international conferences. We have Dr. Soumya, who is also the associate professor and consultant dermatologist at Amrita Institute of Medical Science, Kochi, Kerala. She is also the assistant editor and editorial board member, IJDVL, that's Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology, and also the chairperson for quiz committee of IADVL. We welcome you, Dr. Soumya. We have Dr. Pallavi, who is a dermatologist, cosmetologist, and laser surgeon in Faridabad. Dr. Pallavi Chawla has done her MBBS, MD, and DNB. We have Dr. Suruchi Garg, who is a dermatolaser and hair transplant surgeon, program director for IADVL Fellowship in Lasers and Aesthetic Dermatology. She's also proposed the global drooping and wrinkle classification for aging face. Welcome, Dr. Suruchi. We also have Dr. Nishi Yadav, who is working as a senior consultant in Dr. P.N. Bale Skin School of Dermatology at New Delhi. Dr. Nishi is also a recipient of IWDA L'Oreal's Leadership Program of 2020. We welcome you, Dr. Nishi. And with this, I would now like to hand over the session to Dr. Latika to take the panel ahead. Over to you, Dr. Latika.
You're on mute, Latika.
Thank you, Dr. Snehal, and thank you, Dr. Rashmi, for the glowing introductions for me and everybody else. And thank you to IWDA for giving me this opportunity to moderate the panel. So am I audible well? Do I need to be louder or is it fine?
Yes, this is fine.
All right. So, and thanks to Dr. Reddy's as well. So, so there is, this common, this chronic telogen effluvium. This is one of the conditions in dermatology, which has a lot of emotional association with it. So as physicians, we not only have to be aware of the, the clinical and the management aspect, but also have a lot of, emotional understanding of the patient. So, and this is, an interesting combination of these skills. So I would like to share my screen and just put the presentation for everybody to see. So I think we have 35 minutes and Snehal, I would appreciate if you can just let me know when 10 minutes are left so that in case like we are falling short, so we can, quickly finish the important points.
Sure, I'll do that.
All right. So as we all know, chronic telogen effluvium is a very common condition, and it was described by Whiting in 1996 as an independent primary idiopathic disease entity. So basically in this, we find mostly with middle-aged women who come complaining of excessive telogen club hair shedding diffusely from the scalp. And when it has been happening for more than 6 months, then it's labeled chronic, as we all know that. And when we examine, we find, a normal thickness of hair, but the woman is really frustrated and she brings balls of hair, claiming and worrying that she will go bald. So this is a hair cycle, which we all know. We just need to be aware of this because this chronic telogen effluvium, as we know, is a disorder of the hair cycle. I wouldn't be going into the details because I would like to have the thoughts of my panelists. So chronic telogen effluvium, basically it's an abnormality in the normal hair cycle. So either there could be a collective teloptosis or a shortening of the anagen phase or the premature teloptosis. And Headington classified it according to the pathogenesis, in which delayed telogen release and short anagen syndrome is what, constitutes the basis of chronic telogen effluvium. So immediate anagen release, delayed anagen release, and immediate telogen release. These are mostly, coming under the acute telogen effluvium. So I would like to start, very quickly with the, what is the history that you will take and what clinical features are we looking for when a woman comes, complaining of excessive hair loss for more than 1 year. So I would like maybe Dr. Soumya to take up that question.
Hi, Dr. Latika. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So yes, this is a common scenario that we find in the OPD, excessive hair fall since 1 year in a middle-aged woman. So the prime suspects, the differential diagnosis, according to me, would be, again, chronic telogen effluvium. And a close differential diagnosis would be early female pattern hair loss too. So I would look for history-wise. I will ask for the duration. Of course, duration is given here. How was the onset, whether it was a kind of acute onset and then it went on, or whether there was a fluctuating kind of course. Were there any triggers? And was it more of a shedding rather than thinning? I would want more clarity on that point, whether the shedding was the predominant complaint than thinning. And also any history of obvious triggers like change of place or any surgery, recent illnesses, the menstrual history, the drug history, any procedures done on the hair, any nutritional issues like any dieting, history of dieting. All these would be points that I would specifically want in the history. As far as examination goes, I would also want to, of course, history of stress as well, any significant mental stress as well. As far as examination goes, I think I would want to look at the, to quantify the degree of hair loss, Is there any patterning, whether it's diffuse or any patterning is evident. I would also look at any signs of erythema, inflammation, scaling, etc., any scarring. Also, I would look at the hair as such, the hair shaft, how is it, the diameter, is there easy fragility and things like that. If I have a dermoscope, of course, I would love to do a trichoscopy and look at the features, including any features of scarring, any anisotrichosis, hair shaft, diameter, variability, etc.
And Dr. Suruchi, would you like to add to that? I think Dr. Soumya has covered it very well. And could you elaborate on the clinical hair test you would like to do to confirm your diagnosis and to assess the severity?
Thank you, Dr. Latika. The clinical hair test, I would like to go in for first, like Dr. Soumya very rightly said, the examination of the scalp is very, very important. We need to understand whether there is any coexisting inflammation of the scalp, scaling or seborrhea over the scalp, any associated infections like tinea or psoriasis, any inflammation like psoriasis. Then the clinical tests which can be done in this scenario are the hair pull test and the hair combing test. And of course, the phototrichogram and trichoscopy are very, very important tests which can be done in this scenario. So for the hair pull test, we always suggest that the patient should not wash the hair for at least 3 days, and then we can take the different areas like occipital, parietal, and the frontal area. We take out 40 to 50 hair strands very gently. And in case the hair pull is more than 10%, it is more suggestive of telogen effluvium. And in hair contest, we tell the patient to wash hair on daily basis for at least 5 days. After 5 days, they can comb and see the hair shedding. So you can always examine these shed hair once the patient brings them along. You can examine their roots, and in case there are more clubbed hair present in the shed hair, that is more suggestive of telogen effluvium. Of course, in present scenario, trichoscopy is a very, very useful diagnostic tool, and that minimizes the need of other tests in current scenario, because once you see the hair diameter variation between 10 to 25%, it is again quite suggestive of telogen effluvium.
Yeah, and so there is also an, I think, an inflammatory type of telogen effluvium which has been described, especially when patients complain of trichodynia, pain in the scalp. Yeah.
So that shows more acute phase when most of the hair are shedding down. That is the time when patient complain of trichodynia, and that shows very severe form of telogen effluvium.
Would any of the other panelists would like to add to the clinical features examination or hair test, what they normally do in their clinics?
Dr. Latika, may I?
Yes, Rajita.
So in a busy OPD, typically, if you have a dermoscope at hand, that pretty much tells you the answer.
Yeah, and, we have the question. The next question is on dermoscopy.
All right. Yeah. Okay, so then I'll wait.
Yeah. So I would like to ask Dr. Sheetal about how commonly she uses her dermatoscope for every patient, or how does she choose, and what are the features you are looking for?
I think trichoscopy is very, very important because we generally want to avoid an invasive procedure like scalp biopsy, although sometimes we may yet do it. I think we have used the trichoscope very often for diagnosis of hair loss. Probably in the COVID scenario, we have reduced it a little, but this is an extremely important investigation for diagnosis of hair loss, both in chronic telogen effluvium as well as in female pattern alopecia. And the main important thing is the variability in thickness of the hair. And it is important to remember that we should cover most of the areas of the scalp, especially the frontal, occipital, and above the ears, because in the female pattern, it is very important. It helps us when we examine both the frontal and the occipital, because the occipital is generally spared in female pattern alopecia, and above the ears is spared in again in female pattern alopecia. So all these three areas should be definitely examined in trichoscopy. The important points to look for are variability in thickness of the hair, which does not happen in chronic telogen effluvium. It is a known fact, so that is the most important thing. And in female pattern alopecia, another factor which we have to look for is the you get more of single hair follicles. The double hair follicles and the triple hair follicles go down in number, and also the number of thin hairs increases, that is more than 10 to 20% is there. where the problem arises when both of them coexist together. Because there are many patients where you might have chronic telogen effluvium and FPHL, because that age group is such where it overlaps for both chronic telogen effluvium as well as female pattern. And the most difficult is alopecia areata incognito, of course, because it is diffuse alopecia areata. The first thing, you have to have a strong index of suspicion, because in these cases, I would definitely go for a scalp biopsy. And when I'm pretty sure that it is chronic telogen effluvium or FPA, I might not go for a biopsy. But when I'm suspecting alopecia areata incognito or diffuse alopecia areata, I'll definitely go for a biopsy. And dermoscopy is also helpful in diagnosing alopecia areata. You will get the classical exclamation mark hair, the broken hair, the black dots, all that will be present in alopecia areata. Sometimes may not be present, of course. Then the proximal hair pigment may be reduced in alopecia areata incognito. That is one thing. And another, though not part of this topic, I would just say that sometimes, very rarely, we have to keep anagen effluvium also in mind. I'm probably saying this because just 2 days back, I saw a case in if the patient had been on Azeron, and I diagnosed her initially as diffuse alopecia areata, and then when I digged into the history, she had history of taking Azeron. So that is one differential we have to keep in mind for diffuse alopecia.
Yes, we have to keep because these are the two main, and otherwise, like we can have hair shaft disorders and hair cycle disorders as well. So very well said, Dr. Sheetal. And Dr. Pallavi, do you have anything to add to that? And would you elaborate on the role of scalp biopsy and what features would you look for? Dr. Pallavi, are you there?
Sorry, it was on mute. Hello, ma'am. Yeah. So Dr. Sheetal has more or less summarized the findings that we find on trichoscopy. So the first thing and the foremost that I will want to put across is that dermoscope is the first thing that you'll put on the scalp of the patient. Like, that is the first thing that you have to do. And my job with dermoscope is mostly to differentiate between CTE and FPHL. For diffuse alopecia areata, you have to have a very high index of suspicion to actually, even think of it. So first of all, do it in a stepwise manner. Differentiate CTE from FPHL, you know the findings already. And if there is any doubt, yes, look for alopecia areata also. And one more point I want to add in CTE, there'll be areas which will be empty follicles. So atrichia is something which is common in CTE. You don't find it in FPHL. In FPHL, yes, there'll be miniaturized hair, there'll be single follicular units, but total loss of hair from the follicle is more common in CTE. So if you get that finding, think about CTE. Secondly, biopsy, again, we proceed only when we are not able to distinguish both of these conditions, or again, CTE from diffuse alopecia areata, or sometimes you even give a trial of treatment for about 1 month, 2 months to the patient. See if there is benefit. If there's no benefit, rather the hair fall is increasing, then you progress to biopsy. It will definitely not be the first time visit the patient does the visit. I'll not be doing a biopsy at that time. I do it generally after the trial. Biopsy, it's very easy to differentiate CTE from FPHL. You get a normal telogen, normal terminal to vellus hair ratio, which is about 7:1. So you get that normal TV ratio. Then you don't see miniaturization. You see empty follicles. So these are the three main histopath findings that you find in chronic telogen effluvium. On the other hand, in FPHL, we'll have a reduction in TV ratio, which is about 4:1 or less than that. Then we'll see miniaturized hair follicles. We'll see, findings more in the frontal area. You, of course, will take biopsy from there. So this is how you differentiate CTE from FPHL. If you are actually conducting a biopsy considering CTE, which is chronic telogen effluvium, you should take at least 2 biopsies from the frontal area and the occipital area, because it's difficult to diagnose it on just one biopsy. So when you talk to a dermatopathologist, they'll suggest send us biopsies from 2 areas. Now, practically, that's very difficult for a patient to agree to in a private practice setup, that they agree to biopsy. So make it a point that you show them the findings on your laptop, the dermoscopic findings. Tell them that this is what you are suspecting. You want to rule out alopecia areata because the treatment is completely opposite. convince the patient so that, you know, when you do a biopsy, even if the result is equivocal, the patient does not get back to you. Because if you're not able to find anything in chronic stages of alopecia areata, just a mild lymphocytic infiltrate, you have to also justify this procedure to the patient. So convince the patient properly on your laptop, showing the findings of trichoscopy, and then proceed with the procedure.
Yeah.
That's
very well said, Pallavi. So basically, you know, dermatoscope is our go-to procedure, and scalp biopsy is really reserved for a few of these special cases. So let's move on to the investigations. So Dr. Rajita, what investigations would you like to do? And then Dr. Nishi can add on.
Sure. Dr. Latika, before that, I wanted to make a point about focal atrichia. So
Yes.
focal atrichia is actually very classic of female pattern hair loss. It is not seen in CT. It is very typical of female pattern hair loss. If you see it, you know that it is almost always female pattern hair loss. Now, one point I wanted to make about occipital biopsy. So typically when we say pattern, we're thinking in terms of a frontal thinning, but we understand that women who have miniaturization tend to have a diffuse involvement. And this you will only be able to diagnose if you have a good dermatoscope and you're used to checking the occiput as well. So there are not that many papers. We all keep using this term called DUPA. So diffuse unpatterned alopecia, which is different from CTE because you do have miniaturization. Now I'll come back to the question that you mentioned. So I'm assuming that we have ruled out a coexistence or a differential of female pattern hair loss. And if I'm convinced that there is CTE, I go by the expert consensus statement that was published last year. So I do a hemogram, a TSH, and a vitamin D. Now, if somebody can't afford vitamin D, it tends to be a little expensive, then I wouldn't mind empirically giving them some vitamin D. So these are my first basic ones. Then the advanced testing would involve a ferritin, a serum B12, even a ANA serology. Then it would become a little more specific depending on the situation.
Yeah.
And I would not do hormonal evaluation because if I'm thinking of a hormonal angle, then I'm thinking of female pattern hair loss or either a DUPA or some kind of a miniaturization process.
Yeah. Dr. Nishi, would you like to add? I think you're on mute, maybe.
Are you there, Dr. Nishi?
Yeah, so if the patient gives a history that she has been on a crash diet, or there was a less of protein intake, we can assess clinically also. If the patient looks anorexic, then maybe I also order for serum protein levels. And in few patients, I do serum calcium levels also. These are the advanced tests. And if there is some kind of autoimmunity, which we assess during the history taking and examination, then certainly the ANA levels and anti-DS DNA antibodies also, because drug intake is a very common cause of chronic telogen effluvium. And as Rajita ma'am mentioned, the other tests. So these are the ones which we follow.
Yeah.
One thing can I add?
Yeah.
During this COVID period, I have also seen that I've had a lot of patients who've had an ongoing hair loss. So they have had a chronic telogen effluvium going on for 2 to 3 years. But due to the stress of COVID or dietary restrictions or exercise in the lockdown phase, they also had a addition of the acute telogen effluvium. So they report excessive hair loss 3 to 4 months after that trigger. So when we are taking history for a chronic hair loss of 2 to 3 years, we also have to, ask the patient if there is any recent increase. So
yes,
that
so there can be multiple triggers that
multiple triggers.
Yeah. There can be multiple triggers. As we have seen in the causes, there are multiple causes. So more than one cause can exist definitely, and giving rise to fluctuations, and that is the unpredictable course. Okay, so
one more thing I wanted to add, ma'am, that immunization has also been labeled as a cause of chronic telogen effluvium, and I've read that HPV vaccination leads to CTE in some patients.
Yeah.
So this is also we have to ask about immunization. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the treatment. Definitely, we try to find out the cause and correct it once identified. That's the basis of our treatment. And potential therapeutic options, basically they address these pathogenic factors. Like we should try to find therapies which inhibit catagen and induce anagen and telogen follicles and inhibit exogen. So this is like, but so far there is no FDA approved therapy which can, work on these factors. So as of now, we are working on factors which trigger catagen and thereby, working to improve the telogen effluvium. So, Dr. Sheetal, what do you think is the, first line when the patient approaches? What do you start with? How do you approach the patient once you have diagnosed in your mind, you've done the examination?
Counseling is very important because generally, especially when it's a female, her main fear is that she is going bald. So that fear we have to remove from her mind first, that she is not going to go bald. There is thinning of hair, but she's not going to go entirely bald. That is the first fear we have to remove. And often there is stress also associated as a result of the hair loss and is a cause of the hair loss. So if we can take a look at that and counsel the patient and get the history, maybe we can suggest some stress management techniques. The other thing is nutrition is also important. So many of the younger generation, because of their lifestyle, because of their work scenario, often nutrition and exercise takes a back seat. So that counseling is also essential. Only problem arises when we are not really sure of the cause, because the patient is definitely going to ask us what is the cause. So if all the investigations come normal, and we of course have diagnosed it as chronic telogen effluvium, but we do not have a cause to give her. So that becomes a bit of a problem, but we can always explain it to her that it will be reversible at some point of time, but you'll have to give it a patience and continue the treatment, whatever we are giving you. So sticking to the treatment is very important. Compliance with the treatment is important, and patience is important. So that is the part of the counseling which I would say major important points.
Yeah, so I think counseling forms a very, very important role, especially in this condition. Would anybody like to add to that? So basically, yeah, Rajita.
So for ages, people with hair loss weren't taken seriously, and lots of times when somebody with a full head of hair comes and says, I am losing hair in clumps, dermatologists might be tempted to think that it's in the mind. So very rarely is hair loss in the mind. Typically, it is a physical thing. So that's something that dermatologists of today understand, but sometimes the seniors, especially the men, I hate to see it, but yeah, I think they kind of tend to take it less seriously.
Yes, so we need to take our patients seriously, empathize with them and explain to them, this is the normal hair cycle and, this is how it gets triggered. And then, we have to assure them that, so many times, every time we have to assure them, yes, you will not go bald. So, this is treatable. Okay, so very commonly, the first thing which we prescribe is the nutraceuticals or the vitamin supplements. So what do you think is the role of nutraceuticals, Dr. Soumya? And do you think it's evidence-based? So,
yeah, nutraceuticals. Before that, I agree with Dr. Rajita totally. And I also feel that since none of us would have, all of us would have experienced hair loss at some point of time or the other. So it's often we have to refrain from telling the patients that, see, I suffer worse. So I have that sometimes an impulse. So it's not like they're coming to an expert who has, but yeah, we do try to help them out and feel that empathy for them. Yeah, so coming to the point.
I'm just budging. Yeah, I'm just coming in. Something interesting that every time my son would have his exams and I would be on leave, from the childcare leave, that is when I would discover that I had hair loss. If you remember that I had reached out to a couple of you, I would actually have, those hair loss, which you otherwise don't have the time to, look at. So it's very much true that we've all had that.
Yeah, I think emotional factors are a very important role, which, that's why like 70% of the cases, we don't find an exact organic cause. So I think take the emotional factors more seriously.
True. I came across an article where a patient had done a self-made graph where he had counted the daily hair and correlated it with the stress, the points of stress.
Yeah, that's a very interesting article. I think everybody.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, so coming to the point of nutraceuticals, again, a very hotly debated topic. We all know that the cells of the follicular matrix, they have a very rapid turnover, proliferating cells. So we know a lot of nutrients, micronutrients, that is minerals and vitamins, are involved in the hair follicle development, the immune function and all that, but their role is perhaps not very clear. So if a person has a deficiency, this definitely constitutes a modifiable risk factor. So I would not want to discount nutritional supplements at all, because they might have a role, but currently the role is not very clear. For me, I go by mainly iron supplements, because I do find that iron levels, it is easy to document deficiency. We can do the iron studies very well. Many of these patients do have a documented iron deficiency, of iron store deficiency, as obviated by serum ferritin levels and iron levels.
What cutoff do you take, Soumya? What cutoff do you take for ferritin?
I take 70. 70. But I guess 50 to 70 would be a cutoff.
Yes.
There are different
minimum should be 40.
mention.
Yeah, above 40. If 70 is better, but.
Right, absolutely.
Then
in
do you
the
still...
presence of a normal ESR, as we all know, like you
Yes.
said, iron being ferritin being an acute phase reactant, ESR less than 10 also we have to look at.
So we need, that's why, like Rajita mentioned, CBC and then ferritin, these.
Yes, absolutely.
The ESR as well.
So I guess most of the studies, there are conflicting reports and studies on even the role of iron, but I go by looking at iron when a patient comes with this kind. And also vitamin D. Though most of us have vitamin D deficiency, there are studies in patients with documented vitamin D deficiency and hair loss. I feel that it's worth supplementing. Regarding biotin, it's probably hugely exaggerated. The role is hugely exaggerated, and the levels of biotin that we give are probably it's much above the RDA. In fact, I would want to share a tidbit. I recently had a patient who was on long-term biotin supplements, taking TID and all. And when she came to me, I did as a part of a hair loss workup, I did a TSH levels, and which was high. I sent her to the endocrinologist asking for opinion, because TSH levels were high and T3, T4 wasn't that, TSH levels were low and T3, T4 weren't that high. And the endocrinologist opined that this could be caused by the high biotin supplements, and asked me to stop it and repeat after 3 weeks. And it was found to be normal. So I don't know how many of us are aware that high biotin supplements can also cause a false estimation of the thyroid levels, and you might end up misdiagnosing the patient.
And a lot of drug interactions also biotin has, a lot of drug interactions.
Right, absolutely.
Can I make a point?
Yeah, Soumya, if you're done, then Rajita can.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Yeah.
So it's not like biotin alters the TSH, but any assay, lab assay, that is based on the Evidin and biotin method is going to be altered when you have a lot of biotin.
Exactly.
So it's advised that you give a break of at least a week, and then you do whatever test, particularly something like a serum total testosterone or TSH, even your any of these hormonal assays are all going to be botched up because of the biotin. And lots of times we need not give it. The patients are taking those gummies or whatever much before they come and see you.
Right.
Yeah, so because normally we see that, the first time the patient comes, before we can even identify the cause, the first thing we give the patient is a multivitamin, a hair supplement with all the multiminerals and all. So without even having evidence. So do you think that's a correct practice? Is it more like a placebo, or it's like, because as we know that unless there's a measurable deficiency, these vitamins are not really proven, especially like there are no high quality studies on this. It's a very empirical evidence. Do you think, what do the panelists opine?
There is a role for, if I may take this up.
If there is a deficiency, then certainly we have to correct it, and then go for cyclical therapy for iron, or decrease the chances of overload as well as the washout. So I always give iron supplement.
think there is some network issue.
Nishi, you could probably leave and join again if you're finding it difficult. Or the other thing is that, you could try through your another device if that is another way.
So
If anybody experiences that, leave and join again. That is one easy way, to get back to the circulation.
So basically, we are discussing whether a blanket multivitamin should be prescribed or not. We are all doing it actually. And we
Can
left
I
consent.
contribute, Dr. Latika?
Yes, Dr. Suruchi.
Yeah, I would say that in Indian scenario, most of our diet is carb based, and I would say that it is definitely lacking in proteins, one, and most of us suffer from iron deficiency anemia. So there is a lot of logic of adding the supplements, and I think adding high protein diet, which actually makes a lot of difference to most of the patients. That is what I've seen in my personal experience. That adding vitamins, iron, and proteins, especially proteins early morning, it works very well in most of the cases of telogen effluvia.
Yeah. So many patients also have a subjective well-being. After a month, they do come up and say that, my hair loss has reduced, and whether it's a placebo effect or it's actually working. So actually, we need more studies on this.
And yeah, Latika, can I add something? Latika, can I add something?
Yeah.
We have in Mumbai, actually, we face this. We have a huge vegetarian population. So vitamin B12 deficiency is very common in the patients whom I see. So that is an additional supplement sometimes I give. It may not be true for all areas, but in Mumbai, there is a large part of population which is strictly vegetarian. So that is one thing, vitamin B12 we have to look at.
Yes. So whichever deficiency we find, we definitely have to replace it. And Dr. Nishi, are you back? You would like to add?
Yeah, ma'am. Sorry, I just logged out because of a poor internet connection today. Yeah. So I'm totally agreeing with all the panelists. And yes, as ma'am suggested that Indians, they have, most of them, they have vegetarian diets. So they are, most of the times they are deficient in vitamin B12. So I do supplement with vitamin B12. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that I prefer to give a cyclical therapy to decrease the chances of overload and washout as well. And it works very well within in my practice, because due to the dietary habits and the latest trends of a few diets and crash diets or gymming, or there are lots of losses in terms of proteins and micronutrients which we have to replenish anyways. So I am very much comfortable and confident giving these nutraceuticals, though yes, evidence based, they are still, we need to have more larger studies about that.
Yeah, so I think
sorry to interfere. Sorry to interfere, Dr. Latika. We have 5 more minutes. We have to wind this.
Okay. So as a panel, we all agree, that these nutraceuticals are helpful, and we do need more studies, and we all use them in our practice and find them very useful. So moving on to the next, empirical treatment, which we use very commonly, that is the biopeptide preparations. So Dr. Rajita and then Dr. Sheetal, do you use them, and what do you think of them?
Yes, I do use mostly the acetyl tetrapeptide, the red clover leaf capixyl formulation, and I find it very useful. Now, it's not very evidence-based. I know of one study only, that was a small one, not a high-powered one, but these are great for improving hair anchorage, and they tend to act rather dramatically. So if you follow with a drain test, you will see that in front of your eyes by the 3rd month, sometimes by the 2nd month itself, the hair shedding comes down drastically.
And Dr. Sheetal,
I agree with Dr. Rajita.
Do you use minoxidil in
Yes, I use minoxidil very frequently. Only thing is with minoxidil, theoretically what can happen is that immediate telogen release can occur. So sometimes patients may develop a hair loss initially, but most of the time minoxidil works very well in chronic telogen effluvium. In addition to the topical biopeptide which Rajita ma'am mentioned, there are in addition some hair serums which contain these biopeptides where we are not really aware of what it contains. So that I generally desist from actually, but I think this is one area where more studies are required, and that will be definitely helpful, I think, in further management of CTE actually.
Okay. So moving on, since we are short of time, so I'd just like to mention this comment that even corticosteroids, they help in a few of the cases, when especially we are suspecting some inflammation, topical or systemic. And so would Suruchi and Pallavi, would you just very briefly in just a line or two mention if you are aware of any newer therapies for chronic telogen effluvium? And
if we
we could also talk about PRP and Nishi also. So we could wind up with these last two questions, the role of PRP and the newer therapies.
See, when we do a literature search for these newer therapies in chronic telogen effluvium, most of the results that we find are either for female pattern hair loss or for alopecia areata. So per se, there isn't much research going on for chronic telogen effluvium, but some molecules like caffeine, nicotinamide, procyanidine, panthenol, dimethicone, there is the CNPDA complex. So this is something that has been found to be useful in chronic telogen effluvium. Apart from that, tripeptide copper complexes, as Dr. Rajita mentioned, they have also been studied in CTE. Apart from these, there's also a role of chronic alternative medicine. So that is the alternative medicine in the form of acupuncture, maybe meditation, then hypnotherapy. So all of these have been mentioned to improve female pattern hair loss and alopecia areata, the universalis form. So if at all there is a patient who's not responding at all to any of these treatments, maybe we can try these alternative medicines as a treatment.
Okay, Dr. Suruchi, would you like to add, and would you mention about PRP, since like you have written a very nice paper about the role of PRP?
Thank you, Dr. Latika. Yeah, I'm quite fond of PRP in telogen effluvium as well, just like female pattern hair loss. And I've seen good improvement with PRP usage. Now, there's a very sound rationale. Of course, we don't have much literature on it. I've done publication on telogen effluvium, just single case report in one of my papers. But I would say that, just the way there are more literature coming on minoxidil, how it works on making the hair enter into the anagen faster. Same way the PRP works by stimulating the vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF, PDGF, and the epidermal growth factor. So overall, it is working on the golden anchorage, which is comprising of the ectodermal basement membrane, the bulge portion of arrectopili muscle, and the stem cell region. And practically speaking, PRP has growth factors for every little tissue around the hair follicle, and it can actually rejuvenate the whole tissue and improve the environment. As of now, we just know that it is the shortened anagen syndrome. But once we start improving the environment, we're giving more signals for hair growth. And once the nutrients, the right nutrients, the macronutrient like protein and the micronutrients which are deficient, they start flowing in right direction, the hair starts entering into the anagen phase. So that is my whole understanding about how PRP works in telogen effluvium, and I have really positive results on that. So I would say,
so theoretically, yes, it's a very promising therapy. I think we need to use it more and maybe publish more and have more studies on this. And also, are any of you using oral minoxidil? Because there was a
single study.
Sinclair is using oral minoxidil, and we are using it for female pattern hair loss, but he has recommended it for CTE. So that's something which, we can all try for our patients. Doses from 0.25 to 2.5 milligram. Okay, so now the very last question, since Rajita was mentioning, it's very important to monitor the response to therapy. So would you like to tell the panel, tell the audience, how do you monitor response to therapy?
So chronic telogen effluvium, I make them do something called the drain test. It's something like a modified wash test without the counting and the analysis of the short hairs or the long hairs or the vellus hairs or the terminal hairs. So when you have a patient who's going to, and this has been described in literature as well. So the patient basically picks up the hair from the drain and then puts the date and staples it onto a paper, and then she comes to you with 2 papers after a month or maybe after 2 months, and then she sees it and you see it, and that's one great way. And I wanted to make, with your permission, a point about PRP. So just a little background here.
Very quickly, because we are running short of time.
Yeah. So I take care of a chain of 23 clinics. As of today, we have 92 dermatologists, and there's enormous pressure on me to allow them to do PRP for telogen effluvium, because these patients are asking. There is a for a financial reward which is immediate. There's a patient gratitude that's important, but I think we should wait for better science there.
No, I think acute telogen effluvium we should not, but like chronic telogen effluvium, it can be tried, I think.
Yeah, in case we're not doing, how do we know that it's working or it's not working?
No, so if it is a trial, then fine. So if you have an ethical committee permission and you do it like a trial, then that's fine. But since we are clinicians now, I don't mind giving like a copper and a manganese and a magnesium containing pill as a placebo. But to do a procedure as a placebo is a little, that's something like, I guess we all have to take a call, and I get to take the call for 92 dermatologists. And so you can imagine that I've been resisting it for a long time. I'm going to resist it till we get better papers.
Right. So I think for acute telogen effluvium, certainly not, but like telogen effluvium, if you are not able to find the cause, this has been going on for 1 year, 2 years, then definitely, it can be tried. And so I think with that, I would like to thank all the panelists. We had a wonderful session on this very common frustrating condition. And we really loved the inputs given by all of you. And I think I also learned many new things. And hopefully, we'll be better able to handle our patients of chronic telogen effluvium with this refreshed knowledge and some new approaches to try. And with that, I would like to come to the end of the panel. And again, I would like to invite you to register for the upcoming WorldEcon, which is on the 17th and the 18th of July. And more information will be sent soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And
thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Latika, for this excellent session. We would now like to, and even all the panelists, thank you very much. Really good insights, which will really help all of us in treating chronic telogen effluvium. We would now like to move on to the second session, which is a very interesting one, and it really helps us to gain experience from someone who has gone through that. So I can say from experience, we are going to learn. And this session is called as Coffee Table Discussion. And the session will be taken by Dr. Shanti Devadasan. So I will take I can say a 30-second time to just introduce Dr. Shanti. Dr. Shanti is a consultant dermatologist at RxDX Healthcare, Whitfield, Bengaluru, and at Dr. Sunny Medical College, Bengaluru. She has got large number of publications and 2 original research articles also. And Dr. Shanti has received the 3rd prize at National IADVL GSK Quiz Program Dermacon in 2019. So we welcome you, Dr. Shanti, and over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Snehal. Is there an echo?
No.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Shanti, and so we just finished a very informative discussion on chronic.
Any other device, Shanti? Do you have 2 devices on or a single one?
No, ma'am. I just have one. There is an echo.
This is okay now. I think that's an angle.
Okay.
This angle is okay. Maintain it.
Okay. So we just finished our session on chronic telogen effluvium, and now I'll be hosting the lighter coffee session. So at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Rashmi Sarkar ma'am and the IWDA for giving me this opportunity. And I'm extremely honored to be interviewing 2 very eminent dermatologists, Dr. Neena Khanna ma'am and Dr. Vibhu Mandarita ma'am. So I have been fortunate to have seen both of them speak at various conferences during my post-graduation in Delhi. And Vibhu ma'am was in fact one of my examiners in the final MD exam. And she was very good. I did pass. So all of us know about the both of them.
You're taking the interview and you're passed in one go. That is something that I did not know. Good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I will be just giving a brief intro about both of them, although we all know them. So I'll share my screen. Is there, okay. Everyone can see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Dr. Neena Khanna ma'am is the head of Department of Dermatology in AIIMS, New Delhi. And she is a recipient of multiple awards, including the Ambari Oration, the LK Bhutani Award, the IADVL Best Teachers Award in the North Zone 2021, and many more. So she has authored multiple articles and multiple chapters as well as books. And I think all of us, or at least the youngsters, know ma'am's name from our MBBS days because her book is kind of like the go-to book for dermatology in undergraduation. So I welcome you, ma'am, to the coffee session.
Hi.
Hi, ma'am. Dr. Vibhu ma'am, she is also the director professor and head of the Department of Dermatology in Lady Hardinge Medical College. And she is a Commonwealth Fellow, Pediatric Dermatology, GOSH London. She is a recipient of the Developing Country Dermatologist Award 2007. And as you can see, a lot of pediatric dermatology ma'am has done much work in it. She has authored multiple chapters as well as publications. So I welcome both of you ma'ams to the coffee session.
Are we supposed to get coffee?
If you do have it with you, ma'am. Vibhu ma'am, are you there?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to call Dr. Vibhu ma'am. Is she there?
Hi. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello everyone. I'm a bit late in joining. I just
But you have your
overheard
coffee with you. I think you must be having your cup of coffee with you.
I'm just waiting for my dinner to get ready, and then I think winding up dinner with a cup of coffee would be better. Hello ma'am, how are you?
Hi.
So ma'am, I will start with the questions. I'll be asking same questions to both of you, most of them. So first to Neena ma'am, let's start with from the very beginning. What made you choose dermatology as your specialty, especially earlier when it wasn't as coveted as it is now? So yes, ma'am.
Rashmi's already mentioned my starch saris. I think in one of my talks, actually, I loved my starch saris and I loved surgery. So I didn't want to get into theater and change the, remove the starch sari, get into
anesthesia. Yeah, no.
Yes. So I thought, I'm going to sort of ride two horses, So that's why I chose dermatology, because dermatology entailed doing a bit of surgery and messing your fingers with blood. So that was probably the reason. And I think I also have, ability to foretell the future, and I knew dermatology was going to become very popular. So I took it at a time when it was easy to get.
Okay. And Vibhu ma'am, the same question.
Like for me, dermatology was never the first choice. So I'll admit here, it was always, general medicine was a passion for me to be general medicine. And as luck would have it, I got dermatology in the first list of Delhi PG. And I joined Maulana Azad. And after, I think, 15 days of having done dermatology there, I realized that this is the specialty that I'm, made for. And then even afterwards, I was offered medicine also, but then I decided to continue in dermatology because, I came to realize that this is so holistic that, it includes children, elderly, women, all age groups. You have chance to do surgery, you have chance to do procedures, you have your touch with the patients, you have your touch with the basic sciences, research. So there were ample opportunities and lots of spare time to yourself and for your family. So I chose dermatology and I decided to stay on in dermatology.
Okay, those are very interesting answers, ma'am. And it's true about the holistic nature of dermatology. So the next follow-up question to this, what how did you get into the academic field? Why academia and not like private practice? So first, Neena ma'am.
I think it was just luck. I got a job after my senior residency at UCMS, so I was there for a couple of years. And subsequently, Dr. Bhutani wanted me back in the department at AIIMS. So I just stayed on. Now, I'm going to retire around the corner, around the year actually. And I was just trying to figure out how would it be in practice, and I can't even fathom how it would be in practice. Okay. So I think this is going to be the end. I probably not get into practice.
Okay, ma'am. And ma'am, Vibhu ma'am?
I know why I am in the academic field. I guess destiny also decides certain things for you based on what you desire. So for me, I could never, I never had the mind or the inclination to be in the private practice, because I always, felt that practice is something which is more of a business. You are selling your skills. You're fixing up a rate for what you're doing for the patient. So for me, the very idea of becoming a doctor, a professional, was to, do service, more of a service, and to study your patients in detail, to study the disease in detail, which I felt that in practice, it is a touch and go. Your focus is not the patient, but your focus is to charge for the time that you are spending. So that was never my idea, never ever. And I always desired to be in the academics, because I felt that academic practice always gives you, I think, more opportunities to have a detailed, view of the problems. You have a team, you have various departments, you can do research, and also it gives you time to do your, the niche areas. Suppose if I'm interested in a particular disease, I can afford to give that attention and that time in the academic practice, but not in the private practice, because there, again, the income, that stability of the income would always be a problem. So it'll kind of overshadow all your interests. So academics always was the choice for me.
Okay. And now you both have entered into the academic field and finally the head of department. So Neena ma'am, how has life changed after becoming the head of department? Recently only, right?
It hasn't changed at all.
Do people treat you differently?
I don't consider myself as head of department. I just consider myself as a coordinator of the department. And I've outsourced everything. So everything is being done by my faculty colleagues. I'm just coordinating the work. That's all.
Is it tougher now, ma'am?
No, not really.
Okay. Right. And Vibhu ma'am, what about you?
Yeah, it's more of a coordinator's role that you have to, step into. But all said and done, I think the responsibilities have increased. And I wonder how my predecessor, Dr. Ramchandra, used to, manage. So you have to juggle. You have to be an administrator. You have to be a good, teacher. You have to be doing multitasking all the time. So certainly, in terms of it desires more of my time, and also lots of responsibilities are on my head, being the head of the department, because I have to see, I'm the provider, I have to set rules. So it is more demanding. I would say. The transitioning takes, I think, some time for you to really get into that mold, because all these years I had just been doing whatever I would plan out for me, but now it is different. I have to plan out for others. And it is easier also because you can delegate and you can shape up the department the way, you would have that vision or that dream, depending upon your individual interests. And you have to keep the interests of your students, your faculty. Everybody should be taken along. Everybody should be given an opportunity. So I think it's a bigger responsibility. It's a bigger role for me to play.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you for the detailed answer. And like you said, the multitasking and the demands have increased. So now coming to a very often asked question, but equally pertinent one about how do you maintain work-life balance? So Dr. Neena, ma'am.
I'm probably not the best person to be answering that question, because I've always said I'm a full-time housewife and a part-time dermatologist.
Okay.
I maintain that. I am a full-time housewife, complete housewife, and I work for a couple of hours in the institute as a dermatologist. Yeah, but I think I enjoy both roles, and I actually don't have, it's generally a managerial skill. They say you should divide time, there should be watertight compartments, but I let both of them mingle. So I work from home sometimes, and sometimes sitting in the office, I call up my home and ask my maid what she's cooking or what she's doing. So I don't have watertight compartments, and I juggle between the two. But I think Rashmi would be able to answer that much better than me.
And
I think actually, ma'am, mine is quite unbalanced actually. But anyway, I think still it's going okay. So, and ma'am is very modest, by the way. She's always said that I'm a housewife when she's not. We know that. So.
Yes, ma'am.
At heart. At heart.
My husband would agree with you, because he says you're so focused on your work. But I know myself, you ask Dr. Pandey and a lot of my teachers, they'll say, oh, she's a complete housewife.
Okay, and Vibhu, ma'am, what about you? Work-life balance.
How to maintain work-life balance? It is important. It's really important, being a mother, being a wife. So I guess, responsibility, you have to be responsible in all the given roles that you have. So that requires an extra effort on your part, because you have to do a lot of planning. That is number one. You cannot just simply go unplanned. So you know what your duties are officially. You have to prepare a talk, you have to deliver a lecture, you have to take a class, you have to hold some meeting, you have to go for a conference, you have to go for an exam. So for all that, you need to have a timetable. So you need to have your days clear, and you need to have your preparations well in advance. So that is one thing. You need to prioritize. At the same time, I'm a person who would not let my family also suffer. I love to spend time with them. So, you need to have your little hours where you can have that quality time for yourself and for your family and for your, domestic responsibilities also. So you depend a lot on your family for that support. And fortunately, people sometimes, your own family would grumble. So once, that grumbling becomes too much, then you have to say no to some of your official things, even when you want to really go ahead with those invitations or those propositions, but you have to curtail those, things there and then, because you have to maintain balance. It cannot be just one-sided. So I guess you have to keep a very kind of a level-headed approach, that what is important at a particular time accordingly. So a lot of planning, and you need to have help at home, because you just can't be irresponsible, and you just can't leave everything onto somebody else's shoulder all the time. It can be sometimes, but it can't be all the time. So, and it means a lot of work also. So you'll have few hours to relax. Your time becomes limited, your social outings become limited, and you have to sacrifice a lot on many other things in case you want to maintain that balance.
Okay. Ma'am, to you only, Vibhu, ma'am. So like you were saying, what about you yourself? Like for you, how do you carve out personal time for yourself, not just family or work? Do you have any hobbies, interests that keep you occupied?
I used to have lots of hobbies, and after becoming the head of the department, I'm not getting enough time for hobbies. Simple hobbies: going out shopping, just taking down long walks, morning walk, evening walk, playing, and socializing. So reading, listening to the music, meditating. So maybe the time for all these activities that I love to do, the hobbies that I love to, engage myself, has become less. But I'm enjoying. I think my attention towards my work is more. So that is also keeping me happy, because you see, you are a mix of so many things. One thing cannot give you, it becomes monotonous. So you need to have a good mix up, and you need to have a good uh, uh, balance of all these activities thrown together.
Right. Okay. Ma'am, Neena ma'am, what about you?
I'm a very avid gardener.
Okay.
I love mud under my nails. And I'm also a very house proud person. I think in any of the lectures which I've given for Rashmi's sessions, I usually have pictures of my house all over, sprinkled in my
Yes,
presentation.
ma'am, we have those nice pictures we've seen, So
Yeah, so I'm very house proud. So home, as I said, takes up a lot of my time, and I enjoy it. I used to love cooking. Now I've stopped because I'm on a huge diet.
Okay. Ma'am, even you.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
And during COVID times, I've achieved a huge amount of decreased BMI. So I'm quite proud of myself.
Oh, wow. Congrats, ma'am.
That's
okay, ma'am. Now coming to a little more serious topic, burnout, stress, anxiety, and in extreme cases, even depression. These are increasingly becoming common, or we are increasingly becoming aware of them, especially in residence and even post-residency, anybody. So how do you think this issue can be tackled? How to decrease all these? Vibhu ma'am.
Stress and anxiety, I think they've always been there. They've always been there. It's only that we have started talking about them, and we have started, taking cognizance of these problems. But I think as a human being, as long as there have been, life has been in existence, some sort of a stress and anxiety have always been there in all the age groups. You can consider school children, you can college goers, married, unmarried, workers, those who are unemployed. So at different stages in life and in different walks of life, stress and anxiety have always existed. So we talk about stress in the residence, I think, but it is on the rise. And there are various factors, which I can see could be the cause, is that the expectations, performance anxiety, and the expectations from oneself, they are increasing multifolds, because the pace of life is so fast that we want to catch up. We do not recognize what our true personality is, what exactly I want and what exactly gives me happiness, but just the sheer rat race to copy my peers. The peer pressure is so much that leads to anxiety, and that leads to stress. So it could be multifactorial. How to cope up with this is that you need to have your stress busters. You need to have your help groups. They could be your friends, that you should be able to talk, you should be able to communicate, you should be able to dissipate your thoughts. So it is always that burden of thoughts. When they do not find a voice or a channel, you become clogged with that, and that leads to stress, and that is harmful both physically as well as mentally. So you need to talk, you need to discuss out your problems, whosoever you feel, you are comfortable with. So that's what I do. So in case there is, some stress about something, anything, it could be a personal thing, it could be an official thing, it could be a professional matter. So I think, again, you have to have your support system around you, that you have to define yourself, where you find that comfort zone, wherein you can open up and wherein you can, draw that help in order to lessen your stress and anxiety.
Okay, so it's very important to seek help, seek support. Right. Neena ma'am, what about you? How do you think this should be tackled?
The last 4 months in the department, I found that a lot of residents were actually having a lot of issues. So last month we started a mentorship program in the department. So we are 9 faculty as of now, and we've got 30 odd residents. So each of us has been allocated one mentee. So we have 1 senior resident and 2 or 3 junior residents as mentees. So we met over a cup of tea. Actually, my group met over a glass of lassi because the summer had started. And, we just, discussed everything but dermatology, everything but academics, And we, I told them about the challenges we faced as residents, trying to get from them what are the challenges they are facing as residents. So, I discussed it with the psychiatry department also, and they said that this is a good program to start. So there is, the ice is broken, and the residents consider the faculty not just as, something to be in awe of, but somebody, a shoulder. And I actually turned around and told them, I said, I'm making this group primarily because in case I fall ill, I have 3 people in the department to contact, and I'm sure all faculty will look at you people to be the first support group. Similarly, the older people will be your first support group. And many of the residents are away from their families. So, there is not enough channels to vent out. I think friends are good, but many of them actually stop interacting with people when they get depressed. So I hope this mentorship program works, because I come from CMC, law, and we had this mentorship program there also, as when we went as undergraduates. So I found that very helpful, but I could go and speak to my godparents there, if I had an issue, they would help me out. I hope this also helps people out when they're, finding it difficult to cope up with academics or something happening in their personal life.
Okay, that's actually a very, very good initiative, ma'am. I
So
hope that
I've been encouraging my faculty colleagues to actually meet their mentees, and I think 6 or 5 of the faculty out of the 9 have already met their mentees over the last 1 or 2 weeks. And I got a feedback that it's something which is very nice, and maybe 3 months down or 6 months down the line, I would give you a feedback and tell you how it is working for our department, and maybe it could be started in other departments as well.
Yes, ma'am. Like in other colleges too, it would be a really good initiative. Yes, ma'am. Okay. And now a question specific to each of you, ma'am. Vibhu, ma'am, you are one of the founding members of the Society of Geriatric Dermatology and Aesthetics of India, and you have conducted the GADCON conferences. So how did you find an interest in geriatric dermatology?
So geriatric dermatology, as I said, everything is dynamic, including the specialty of dermatology. So we know how we have been changing with times over a period of time. We used to talk more about infections, then we moved on to the autoimmune diseases, and then we moved on to the, neoplastic diseases, and then so on and so forth. So the requirements of the specialty have been changing based on the changes in your epidemiology and so many the advancement in the technology has given us longevity of life. So we know that the population, the lifespan of the population has increased tremendously. So earlier we used to look at, the maximum that lifespan used to be, say, age of 60 or maybe 55, but now we have the life as long as up to 80 years, 90 years. So with that, there is going to be a change in the spectrum of skin diseases, and the demands on dermatologists would be a different kind of demands. We need to be aware of all the spectrum of disorders that this subset of population is going to face. And in the next 20 years, I think globally this is going to happen, that we'll see an elderly population. The number of elderly is going to increase many folds. So this was the thought. And also we had started one geriatric, specific geriatric OPD services for the elderly patients more than 60 years of age. So a designated clinic for them, because the number was more. So considering their constraints, time constraints, a special time in the outdoor was fixed up for them. So we realized that definitely the panorama of dermatosis in this group of population is different from what we have been seeing. So they have problems associated with polypharmacy. They are on many drugs. So, and plus they have reducing function of kidney, they have other comorbidities. So it becomes a challenge to treat and diagnose. And that is how the entire idea of geriatric dermatology was born. And then many a times, like we have elderly parents, we have elderly relatives for whom we have to treat for various skin diseases, and we are not very clear whether this is because of a drug or this is some dermatosis, or so there is a lot of confusion, and still we are not very familiar with the problems that this population encounters. So that is how the whole idea was born. And we thought that to give it shape and to work in a better organized manner, so this society was born.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. And ma'am, Nina ma'am, last question to you. As Rashmi ma'am mentioned in the introduction, you are good with finances, investments, that sort of a thing. So ma'am, it's important for everybody, men and women, to have sound financial knowledge. Any tips, especially for beginners, or any tips in general for financial knowledge?
I think some problem with the net.
It seems that
yes,
stuck. I think, ma'am, it's stuck. Nina, ma'am.
I'll just call up.
Very important question.
Yeah. Can't be answered in a minute, but I think, because it's really important.
Yes, ma'am. Vibhu ma'am, will there be any GADCons coming up?
GADCons, we actually because of the COVID situation, physical GADCon could not be held last year, and we could only hold a webinar on geriatric dermatology. So we took up, it was a very important topic, that was using immunosuppressives for geriatric population. So Rashmi must be, she's also aware of the fact that we are getting lots of patients who are 60 plus with vesicular bullous, autoimmune blistering disorders, and majority of them are on steroids, heavy dose of steroids, and other immunosuppressive agents. So we held one specifically on use of immunosuppressive agents in the geriatric population. So hopefully the situation will improve and we'll be able to hold GADCon physically this year, maybe somewhere in August or September. And we are keeping our fingers crossed.
Ma'am, Nina ma'am is back. Ma'am, is ma'am's video?
Yeah.
Paused
can you
again.
hear us?
Something.
Yeah, ma'am, are you able
About
to hear?
finances? I think you should handle your own finance. Maybe I stop my video.
Yeah, ma'am, you can stop the video so then that voice quality will improve.
Video. You know, I think to answer that question.
Sorry, ma'am.
I think there is a technical issue, it seems, isn't it?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
we can hear you.
I think there's some, I think connectivity issue. I think the connection also doesn't want me to answer that question.
No, ma'am, but we want you to.
That you should handle your husband's finances also, but I think they didn't want. I think my husband must have done some jadoo. He didn't want anybody to hear that.
To hear that, exactly.
Okay, yeah, I love to juggle around with money.
Okay.
And yeah, I invest a lot in shares in the market, but sometimes you lose a lot, like I did during the COVID period. But now these are rosy days, so it's better now.
Okay. So I guess we all need to have a balance of it. I mean, there might be risks, but we should, go ahead and manage our
You
finances.
people are young. I think you people are young, so you should invest in the market.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So, ma'am, that's the end of our session. Thank you both, Neena ma'am and Vibhu ma'am, for being so sporting. And thank you again to IWD and Rashmi ma'am for giving me this opportunity. Any last words, ma'am, you want to say, Vibhu ma'am, Neena ma'am?
We'd also like to thank you for such putting questions together beautifully. Thanks to Rashmi for organizing this, innovative session, and thanks to Reddy. Thanks to Dr. Neena for her, words of wisdom. And to the youngsters, I would say that please do not be so get carried away by the aesthetic dermatology. It is part of dermatology, but then you must always have a scientific approach to all your patients, be it aesthetic dermatology. It is just a very superficial part of it, but the larger unseen part is more of, a medical dermatology. And we all are very fortunate to be in this beautiful branch, wherein, we are like, we are like crime reporters. All the other specialties would call us, seek our referral, seek our opinion, as to give them some, clues as to what is happening when they can't figure out. So I think we are the lucky ones, and best of luck to all of you, all the young ones, to for a successful future and practice and academics wherever they want. So may they be successful always.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think Dr. Neena has joined back.
Yeah, there is some issue with my connection. Yeah, all the best, and thank you, Rashmi and Shanti, for
thank you.
Those questions.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you for having us over and giving us the honor.
Yeah, it was so much fun also,
Yes, and thank you, Shanti, for compiling those questions. It made me think. Actually, you had sent the question, but I didn't look at them. I said, I'm going to answer impromptu.
Okay.
Same with me. Same with me, because it's something, which is always better coming out spontaneously rather than preparing some answer to it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And good night.
Thank you, Shanti.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you, Neena madam, Vibhu madam.
Thank you.
And of course, once again, let me thank, Latika, for doing that really well and also for finishing in time. I think that both the things are important. And always leave, something that the people want to look forward to next time. Leave at that point, because then they will have something to look forward at the Vodacom. Otherwise, if you finish asking everything, then there'll be nothing left. Thanks to all the lovely panelists, whether it is Sheetal, whether it is Somya, whether it is Suruchi and Rajita, as well as Nishi, who was there, and Pallavi. And I think I'm missing out one. I counted 5. So the 6th is, I think,
Suruchi.
Suruchi, yes. So we had a lot of S. Just like, in leprosy, we learn all the S's. So this is how it is. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Everybody looked very nice, and we did have quite a bit of an audience, till the end. We will come back again with Vodacom, and that time we'll have, longer lectures and all. We do look forward, madam, to your financial, lecture again. We had done it once. I loved it, And also Dr. Vibhu and the other panelists. Good night. Thank you, Dr. Reddy's lab and all the associated, Dr. Sneha, Payal. And I don't see Mr. Kirti here today, but you've all done a wonderful job. Thanks.
Yeah, ma'am, even we would like to thank you. And I would always say that, ma'am, IWD has really organized such good sessions. And thank you, Dr. Rashmi, for being a torchbearer and always supporting. And I think it's only because of you. This is being a real and academic feast for all of us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Latika, all my panelists. And I can just say the second session, the coffee table discussion, was just like an icing on the cake. And or I can say, yes, cherry on this icing. And Dr. Nina and Nina madam and Dr. Vibhu madam, your experiences will really, really help each one of us. And thank you, Dr. Shanti, for moderating this session also. Have a great evening and good night.
Thank you so much,
you all.
doctors.
Good night.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
doctors.
you.
It was really
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Bye.